Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's event, Brewing Change, Navigating Uncertainty Together by Centering Science and Community. My name is Michael Johnson, and I serve as a member of the ASM Board of Directors. I'm also a MSphere Senior Editor, and I've been very active in both educational and minority scientific affairs in ASM, and they've been very close to my heart. The American Society for Microbiology is committed to driving innovation and empowering communities. By aligning our efforts with our core values, we cultivate an environment where transformation thrives. Today's event is hosted by the ASM Progress, Impact, Access, and Accountability Committee, or PIAA. The PIAA Committee provides strategic guidance to the ASM Board of Directors and CEO and works to create a community in which all members of the microbial sciences community can contribute to, flourish in, and shape innovation and future in the field. On top of that, they're just absolute great individuals who really have a passion for science and a passion for community in their heart, and they're absolutely just a great group of people to be able to work with. Today's panel discussion will feature three esteemed, amazing. I'm running out of. I can keep going with superlatives, but I'll stop there. Professionals in STEM, and they're here to share their personal journeys and insight on navigating rapid change and uncertainty across STEM. And we know that there's a lot lately. Our panelists will also explore how ASM members can navigate unprecedented challenges with confidence and connection. So we're going to hear from our panelists, and then we're going to have an open discussion and question and answer, some after their talks, but some also at the end, which everyone can really communicate and participate in. So for our first speaker, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Veronica Segarra. Dr. Segarra is a associate professor, faculty in residence, and endowed chair in biological sciences and chemistry at Goucher College. There, she teaches undergraduates to be life sciences in the classroom and in research labs. Her favorite part of her job is actually seeing students carve out careers tailored to their passions, talents, and values, which I think aligns with and I think that connects to a lot of us and how we love to interact with our trainees in our laboratories. So thank you so much, Veronica, for joining us, and the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Like Dr. Johnson mentioned, my name is Veronica, and I'm super happy to be here with all of you. I do research and teach at Goucher College, a small liberal arts college in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, so today I'll share some thoughts about ways in which we can acknowledge the impact of our communities and the impact that they have on our career and how they can help us navigate uncertain times, which is the theme of today's panel. Next slide, please. When I think of our trajectories in STEM, I think of them as pathways coming together. And I also think about a braided river, which is composed of many smaller streams coming together and diverging, full of turns and transitions. In this model, right, the environment around the river affects the flow of the water at different points in different ways. And so here, the water represents where we come to be in our careers in STEM at a particular time. For example, the richness and structure of the riverbed at different spots in the braided river can sculpt our trajectory in STEM. Some of us start our careers in STEM at 2-year institutions before joining the STEM workforce. So here pictured toward the left bottom corner of the slide, some of us start at 4-year institutions. Some of us might join STEM because of years of lived experience or certifications that prepare us as science practitioners, as seen here in this diagram illustrated on the top half of the diagram. For some of us, mentoring, family, and institutional support might make it easier to persevere in STEM. For some of us, financial and societal pressures might make it harder to stay in STEM. Next slide. Here's a QR code that will take you to a recent article in the Journal of Molecular Biology of the Cell, where we discuss in depth the use of a braided river to model our careers in STEM. There, you can also download a template of the illustration that I shared to make your own. Next slide. This is a representation today of what my path in science has looked like, with the communities that have helped shape who I am represented as part of it. In this representation, I have also tried to include the career transitions I have gone through, which in my lived experiences, have those can be tough. They have been tough for me. Those transitions can include transferring institutions as an undergraduate, starting as a postdoc or a grad student, also starting as a tenure track faculty member. And most recently, around 3 years ago, I transitioned institutions as a faculty member. So that was tough too. So I've tried to picture those in. And I have represented here some of the logos of the communities that have helped me through those tough times and celebrate the good ones too. I have also included here scientific societies that have supported me, especially in times where I have been in between academic institutions where it may have been tough to find like an institutional home. Next slide. So, as we reflect today on the power of community in navigating uncertainty, I invite you to answer the following question. If you were to model your trajectory in STEM, which communities have influenced your unique path? And these could be institutions like I did in mine, but also communities of people with which you have developed ties over time because of shared interests or values. So these could be peers, groups of people that you have stayed in touch over time. So modeling your path as a braided river, as a series of trajectories coming together in your career can help us really reflect and recognize those who have helped us and recognize also the hardships that we have gone through and that we have successfully navigated. With that, I'll give it over back to you, Dr. Johnson. Thanks.
Well, I think this model is really fascinating, and I think there's a lot that we can all learn about this. And so, I actually had a quick question for you based on this. And I love this model because I think there's been a lot where we've talked about the pipeline, and where if you turn up the water, and nothing else comes out, is or a leaky or this this kind of there's been so many of those analogies, and I really like yours because it draws on so many different experiences in your life. So the question is this. Um, I'm interested how you essentially treat, because you mentioned hardships, and I don't necessarily want to dwell on negatives, but what I do know is that they can actually teach you what you don't want to be, what direction you don't want to go to. So I'm curious how, in your model, how you would play with those particular ideals in trying to, figure out where your path is in that braided river. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Awesome. Um, it might, we leave it up to people to think about how they would model those, but if in my lived experience, I would maybe model those as boulders or maybe dams that redirect where we end up and how we develop ways of thinking and ways of working with others. They might redirect our flow to communities that might be more supportive and provide the resources that we need to thrive. Thanks.
Oh yeah, I think that's, so now yeah, I'm like picturing this as an exercise, of people, not only just creating this river flow, but also, there's markers involved, there's, other pieces that you can put in there. I mean, this is a whole craft project of things that people can use for their personal journey. I think that's so phenomenal. There's one more question, and then I think we can move on to our next esteemed speaker. Um, but the question is, someone in the last year of the degree and financially burdened on, what should you do, because let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to parse out the question. Uh, Someone in their last year of degree and financially burdened, what should you do because your study is also affected? So I guess how would you, build those into your particular model, as far as like some of those particular challenges and some of those pools?
Yes. So I think again, this is very personal, right?
Mhm.
Each scientist will determine their own flow, so to speak, their own pathway. But one alternative is taking a leave of absence and then coming back as needed. And I feel like through, if you notice our diagram, it actually recognizes flow out and back into the STEM workforce. And um, if we talk about those transitions and those ways of coping to stay in STEM ultimately, we legitimize them and we can then provide support for folks. Another alternative is to look for mentors that might help you to find alternatives to supplement your earnings so that you can make it through the finish line without taking a break. But it's again, it's really personal, but we're all scientists, whether we take a leave of absence or not, whether it be for money or mental health or taking care of family, whatever that might look like. Thanks.
Yeah. And one more, if you don't mind. I'm kind of curious because, you say STEM workforce, and, I think, I think that a lot of people here probably understand, what STEM workforce might be to them. I think historically it's been do industry or do academia, but, I'd like you to, kind of give your soapbox on what you think is the broader STEM workforce field.
Sure. For me, the STEM workforce is anyone who is doing science, who is helping the scientific enterprise thrive. This includes social scientists who are studying what are the factors that influence or ultimately help us keep and maintain a thriving group of people who are being themselves and practicing science.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And hopefully everybody right now is, really pondering on your question and thinking about those communities that have actually impacted them so that they can fill out this workforce. So I hope you all scan the QR code and we can, maybe drop the link to the paper in the chat because I really think that's a very valuable technique and a very valuable exercise to actually go through. Okay. Thank you so much for that. So our next speaker is Dr. Terrell Morton. Um, Dr. Morton is an associate professor of identity and justice in STEM education in the Department of Educational Psychology at the College of Education at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Whew, that's a mouthful right there. Fun fact, that's actually right across the street from where I went to high school, right across the blue line. I went to Whitney Young. So, all right, Chicago. Go Bears, go Bulls, right? So his research and work focuses on identity as it reforms the persistence and engagement of radicalized and minoritized students in STEM post-secondary education. As a scholar activist, Dr. Morton works to transform the positioning and understanding of Blackness in mainstream education, specifically STEM, seeking justice and joy for Black women, Black students, and other minoritized individuals given the social, cultural, political, historical positioning of their identities. He advocates for identity, justice, and joy to be fundamental for education. And I think we all could really use as much joy as we possibly can. So, welcome, Dr. Morton. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here with you today. Uh, Go Bears for sure. It's been bearing down this past season, so I'm excited to see what Caleb and the team have for us in the future. And as I look outside my window, I see a little snow flurries going on. So I also bring you all some snow on this lovely Wednesday morning or afternoon. As was said, my name is Terrell Morton. I am an associate professor of identity and justice in STEM education. And the title of my presentation today is Through Justice and Joy. Um, so we were asked next to think about what does it mean to kind of navigate in our current times and how do we as professionals not only care for ourselves in this space, but also offer support for those that we are educating, either through our research spaces as teachers or scholars, or through our classroom spaces, or through our committee work spaces, even as we're working with our collaborators. And so, a primary, I guess, argument for me is that we're able to navigate in this current moment with justice and joy at the forefront of our perspectives. And so, how do we proceed with justice and joy? Well, one, I think that we should portal to the past. Two, I think we need to think about what it means to navigate an imminent present, and imminent as not being something that's right in front of us, but imminent as meaning being within, but also outside at the same time. And then to three, to really think about what it means to actualize the future. And I have this image here of Sun Ra, who also has some Chicago connections, being sort of an earlier pioneer in this Afrofuturistic space, embodying for me these three kind of core concepts of portaling to the past, navigating an imminent present, and actualizing the future. Next slide, please. So, what does portal to the past mean? As I'm thinking about justice and joy, I'm reminded of this infamous scene from The Lion King where Simba, in trying to remember who he was, had the opportunity to connect back with his father, who was challenging Simba to not forget where he came from, what legacy he was a part of, what lessons, what ideas, what activism, what energy was instilled within him as he was a young pup, sort of growing up. I guess a cub, not pup. Lions are cubs, excuse me. Uh, and so while we are in this space of uncertainty, of a lot of socio-political unrest, and a lot of pressure that we are facing, if we portal to the past and remember who we are, if you could click please next, we can be intentional to really think about where it is that we came from, what it is that we have instilled within us as lovable and capable beings seeking to drive systemic, cultural, and structural change. We can remember the lessons of our ancestors and what it is that they have navigated across time in order to allow us to have even the privileges that we have today. And then we can draw from those strengths and remembering those lessons as we move forward into our next stage, which is navigating that imminent present. And so, what does it mean to be imminent? It means to be within and to transcend at the same time. And so, from this perspective of being within and transcending, we can embrace the moment. We can be conscious of the fact that the struggle is real. We can acknowledge the fact that these socio-political and cultural and historical challenges that we are facing cause a lot of stress, tension, and pressure for us, both professionally and personally. But that doesn't mean that we have to be consumed by these perspectives as we are envisioning the future that we want, as we're also thinking about what it means to show up for others. And so Melissa Harris Perry encourages us to think about this concept of squad care. Who is our squad, and how are we showing up for our squad in the moments of trial, tribulations, and struggle? And vice versa, how's the squad showing up for us in our moments of trial, tribulation, and struggle so that we are not overly consumed by the challenges? We're able to exist within them and transcend them as we are seeking to actualize the future, which is that third phase of navigating with justice and joy. And here I'm reminded again of what the Queen Mother says from Black Panther. It's not just a matter of remembering who we are. It's not just a matter of tapping into those lessons of being lovable and capable. It's not just a matter of not being consumed by the present, by being within and transcending, but it's a matter of being able to show the people who we are. And so if I think about what it means to show the people who we are, I'm reminded of a powerful quote from Audre Lorde. And what Audre Lorde shares us is, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less important whether I am afraid. And so actualizing the future means embodying the future that we want to see. If we are in a space professionally, personally, or even amongst our community where we are not content, then it is our responsibilities to embody the future that we want to see. It is our responsibilities to enact the visions that we have before us as we continue to support efforts that advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and or social justice through teaching, research, and learning. And so we can actualize the future by being in service to our vision through the strengths of one, portaling to the past, two, navigating the imminent present, and three, then actualizing the future. And so as I leave this community today, and I'm thinking about these three concepts of portaling, navigating, and actualizing, next slide, please. I ask us to think about who is our squad, going back to this concept of squad care. And how can we ensure in this current moment that we are showing up for our squad, that we are using the platform, the power, the privilege, and the positions that we maintain to be in service and support of our vision to expand access, resource, and engagement for others, and at the same time being able to lean in onto our squad to support us, to uplift us as we are also navigating and relying on this broader community. Because it's truly through this collectivist approach that we've seen from a historical perspective, change happen. And I believe that it's through this collectivist approach that we will be able to move forward to something stronger, better, and even greater. And that is all that I have.
That was absolutely wonderful. One of the quotes that came to my mind is this popular phrase I often hear is, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And when you were talking about kind of, talking about your past, that quote just kind of kept coming into my brain as far as how we, perceive what our connection to our past, our connection to our present, and our connection to our future, and how we stand on the shoulders of all those who walked before us. I have a question for you, regarding, the squad, because I think, a very common theme that we're now seeing is, your community, how that affects your path, but now, you're focusing in on like who is that community and how you maintain that. So my question to you is, like relationships aren't just, I think you need to put in effort to, to have a good relationship. So could you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about, some of the effort that you might be, have to expect to put into your, not just, the squad care or, what your squad gives you, but maintaining your squad. Like what personally do you need to do to kind of, stay connected to that squad and make sure that that squad is providing what you need to edify your life?
I appreciate that question. And one of the things that I think about personally that I would encourage others to think about is again, what is the platform, what is the power, what is the privilege and the position that I have within my squad. So if I know that I, Terrell Morton, as an associate professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, carry a certain platform, power, and privilege, and I am working with a squad that may have assistant professors, that may have clinical professors, that may have graduate students in this space, I may have a little bit more power and privilege to take on a little bit more responsibilities than some of those other people. And so, if I want to be effective in my community, I should be showing up by giving a little bit more, by sacrificing a little bit more. Now, at the same time, there will be moments where I will be in need. And
Mhm.
I truly believe that by virtue of me paying attention to when I can step up more, other folks will also pay attention to when I am in need and can step up for me. And I've seen that happen in real time. And again, across power differentials. There have been moments where graduate students have stepped up to support me in my time of need without me even having to say, hey, I need this, I need that, I need this. And I think it gets into not just that professional relationship as we're thinking about the work that we're doing, but it gets into that humanizing perspective I see you as a human before I see you as a graduate student. You see
Mhm.
me as a human before you see me as a researcher, mentor, or professor. And so if my car gets caught in the snow and you see me struggling, you might just pull up and support me, right? Without me even having to send out an SOS kind of message. So I really think it requires effort. It requires intentionality. It requires investment and it requires sacrifice. To be in a good relationship with other people, there is give and take that we all have to provide.
Thank you so much for that. I think that there's a lot to unpack there. I look forward to when we have more of the group discussion, following up with some additional questions there. I think there's some really good stuff to kind of have that self introspection there as well. So I think we will move on to our next speaker. Very excited to welcome Dr. Erica Hartman. Dr. Hartman's research focuses on understanding at the molecular level how microbial communities respond to anthropogenic chemicals, and then using that information to influence real-world outcomes, especially by controlling the spread of undesirable traits. The goal for all the work in Dr. Hartman's lab, whether focused on bioremediation or the prevention of antibiotic resistance, is to promote sustainable and protect. To promote sustainability and protect public health. Dr. Hartman is a member of the ASM Public and Scientific Affairs Committee, which serves as a public policy arm for the society, reaching out to inform and influence public policy affecting the microbial sciences, clinical microbial sciences, and public health. So, welcome, Dr. Hartman. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I am an associate professor at Northwestern University, but today I am here to represent the Public and Scientific Affairs Committee. I will say, so at Northwestern, we had a fairly dramatic issues with funding over the last year. And just to Dr. Morton's point, at one point when all of this uncertainty was really mounting and everyone was very unsure of how students were going to get paid and how research was going to continue, one of my students showed up in my office and just went, this is probably a very stressful time for you. Do you want a cup of tea? I thought that was the sweetest, most wonderful thing, and it's something that has really encouraged me to leverage my position to try to help my students, of course. But on the flip side of that, something that I've taken a lot of strength from is being part of this committee for ASM and just knowing that ASM is really active in the public policy and advocacy space. So the group at ASM that is dedicated to public policy and advocacy is also, it includes the committee that I'm on, of course, but also has a bunch of really wonderful staff members who are very active in education and advocacy, advising and convening, and working on policies that are relevant across the microbial sciences and around the world, but obviously with a strong emphasis on the US. Next slide. And as a lot of things are shifting, one thing that remains constant is ASM's core policy principles. And this is really important because, we rely on institutions and we rely on big groups like this to maintain these types of principles that we all hold in common. And so these principles really guide all of ASM's policy work. And we are committed to continuing to leverage those principles in support of evidence-based policymaking, to educate both policymakers and the public, and to really continue to advance science, including, of course, all of the microbial sciences. And this is something that, like I said, ASM staff members are working on very diligently, that the committee that I'm on, we also participate in, but we also need the help of ASM members everywhere. And so I'll talk a little bit about how everyone can get involved. Next. So just some examples of what this actually means in terms of the actual activities that we get involved in. So one is policymaker outreach, that's really working directly with policymakers to try to, again, educate them and make sure that they're making sound decisions based on what's important to us and our core principles. Also policy development. So I used to think that lobbyist was a bad word, and then I thought about it for a second and thought, actually, it would be really good if experts were writing the policies that are relevant to, let's say, laboratory diagnostics and things like that. And so ASM is active in the policy development space as well. And then a lot of grassroots activities. And again, this is where ASM members everywhere can get involved, and I encourage everyone to get involved. Next. So again, some examples of the types of things that ASM does. One includes advocating for funding, especially at the NIH, because the NIH is, of course, a big funder of a lot of research in the microbial sciences, but not just at NIH, also across other federal agencies. ASM also advocates for the use of science in decisions. And so, for example, this past summer, we incorporated the ASM Academy's work on climate and microbes into a comment urging the EPA to not repeal the endangerment finding. So if anybody remembers, this is the finding that is used to justify things like fighting climate change. And that's something that I had the privilege of actually being able to comment on that statement that ASM put out. We also advocate in coalition for programs that are important to microbiology. So, for example, we have joined the Coalition to Stop Flu to advocate for funding for public health infrastructure. And we also convene ASM policy members to develop policy solutions on things that are specific to the microbial sciences, including things like antimicrobial resistance. So lots and lots of activities, lots of places to get involved. And ASM also partners with a lot of other organizations. So this includes things like federal agencies or other scientific societies, as well as universities, to jointly advocate for issues of mutual concern and show the wide impact of policies. So an example for those of us who are concerned about facilities, F&A, or indirect costs, ASM members obviously are impacted in various ways by changes to these indirects. And so ASM has partnered with other groups to advocate in this area. We also might work together to organize events of interest. So we've partnered on side events at the UN General Assembly about antimicrobial resistance, partnering with the CDC on a congressional briefing about the National Wastewater Surveillance System, and had speakers from CDC and ASM. And so, for example, the photo on this slide shows a CDC site visit to the University of Virginia to see the pathogen genomics centers of excellence work there. And so that was a convening of UVA scientists, Virginia Public Health Department staff, CDC staff, and ASM staff. So lots of opportunities for partnership, and it's not just ASM, it's a really big microphone there. Next slide. All right, so ASM does a lot of stuff at the institutional level, and I'm privileged to contribute to that, but everyone everywhere can get involved and hopefully will. So a couple of ways to do that. One is sign up for the advocacy network. There are opportunities to get in touch with members of Congress, opportunities to advocate for specific policies that ASM has identified as being, again, relevant to us. And so you can get involved, and that's really, really easy. I highly encourage everyone to do it. Next slide. Another thing that's really important is sharing your story. So ASM tries to advocate for things that are important to ASM members, but ASM members all have different lived experiences. And so being able to hear about those lived experiences is really important for us figuring out which policies to prioritize. In addition, we can also then use those short stories and share those stories with members of Congress, which again goes back to that idea of educating members of Congress on what is important to what's happening to people who are in the US and who are working in that STEM workforce. So for example, next slide, some of these stories that ASM members have shared were actually used in Senator Booker's record-breaking 25-hour speech, and also featured in Senator Markey's stories at the Senate Help Committee meeting. So these are stories that if you share, they actually do go and have a direct impact on what's happening at the federal level. Next slide. So last but not least, there are lots of resources for branches, so not just working at the federal level, but also potentially in your local community. And so if you're involved with your branch and you would like ASM policy to get involved, there are lots of things that we can do. And so if you email advocacy@asmusa.org, they can set up things to come give a presentation or get involved. I can't answer any questions about that, unfortunately, but like I said, the amazing staff members who organize these things would be happy to come out and work with branch members and across the US and across, I guess, the world. And that is something that, for example, I've had ASM staff come give a presentation to my group, as a lot of my students are really interested in advocacy and science policy and don't really know what that looks like. And so this is a great way if you or someone you know is interested in this space but doesn't really know, like, what do careers look like? How does getting involved actually manifest? This is a great way to get some hands-on mentorship in that. So that's all I had to say. Again, that's been a great source of strength for me in these times of uncertainty. So hopefully others will also find solace in it as well.
So you actually addressed part of the question that I was going to ask you. I'm very curious on how doing some of this advocacy work has trickled down into your approach of doing science in your laboratory.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that has always been really important to me because, one of the things that I think about a lot, for example, is antimicrobial resistance. And I'm concerned about the use of anthropogenic chemicals. So that's things like potentially the disinfectants and antimicrobials that we use in cleaning products and how that impacts public health. Um, and one of the things that I've really done as a response to getting involved in policy is to think not just about, how do I do the research and how do I publish the paper, but then how do I communicate those results to the people who are responsible for decision making? And so I take a very active approach in generating press releases, and I comment on if there are policies in development at the state level, for example. I do make sure to get involved in those because I recognize that it's important, and that's the reason I did the work in the first place is so that these people would know. So yeah, it's been a really great experience to get involved. Yeah.
That's really fantastic. And I think that that work is so important just to get the word out, to explain to, individuals what we do, how we do it, why we do it. I think so many times they just, see us this, I get the person who says, oh, I can't understand any of that stuff you do. I'm like, no, you absolutely can understand the stuff we do. And, it takes people like you, it takes people like, all the people in this, all of our panelists to, kind of tell these communities like, no, no, you can understand this. I mean, let me, like, I will work with you. I'm excited to explain it to you. Who doesn't like talking about, their passion, right? So thank you so much for that. So right now, one of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to open it up to questions from everyone. So please, if you have questions, please add them into the Q&A, and we can address them live. Um, I think there's already some chat about, kind of, secondary and high school is key motivators to, as far as like how they help you go into STEM, and, how different communities help you go into those. One question that I had for you is, we talked about relationships, we talked about communities, and kind of like, how your designation is as far as in the laboratory or doing these things. What is it always just 50-50, one or the other? Like when you're engaging in these relationships with people, talk a little bit about, what that percentage is and, is it dynamic? Is it static in how you're communicating with these particular populations? And maybe, Dr. Morton, if you could maybe lead us off in that one based on, talking about your squads and then, maybe Dr. Sagara and Dr. Hartman follow up if you have other comments.
Yeah, I would say that relationships are not static. It's not 50-50. Again, going back to power, privilege, platform, and position, there are folks that I have relationships that hold more status than I do. And so there are ways that they may show up. But I think the interesting thing about identity too is that depending on the context that we're operating within, that power and that privilege can shift. If I'm in a space that's run by students, that's for students, regardless of the fact that I may hold a hat as a professor, they hold the power in that space. So I do think that there's intentionality, again, in this constant thinking about how am I showing up? Where am I best suited? What resources and opportunities do I have to provide for this particular squad at this particular context at this particular time versus what can I reasonably ask in response?
Other comments on that?
I guess maybe a funny one to think about relationships and squads potentially including organizations. And I swear ASM is not paying me to, say this, but one of the things that I am very grateful to be able to do is to volunteer at ASM because I feel like I've gotten so much from the society. And so I would encourage people to think, yes, about immediate community and yes, about immediate individuals, but also to think about, there are structures and societies that we can tap into and thinking about, how can I leverage the resources that are available to me, but then also, when you're in a position to give back, like how can I give back? And so I think about, for example, reviewing for ASM journals is something that I'm always really happy to do because I feel like I've
I will
been
put you on the list. Let me. Um,
But I feel like, I've always been, treated with respect and consideration and like had good treatment at ASM journals as an author. And so I think that's a big deal, is to also think about institutions and societies and ASM in particular, obviously, but there are probably others that other people could also tap into.
yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things to keep in mind is that even folks who have been in part of the STEM workforce for a long time and have a long history in it, uh, we also need inspiration and we also go through low parts. So, one of the things that I like to remind students or trainees is the idea that they can also inspire us and they can feed our spirit as well. Just like Erica, you mentioned, and Terrell, your idea of how are we giving to our squad members, right? So that's something to keep in mind. We all hold the ability to inspire and help others through. Thanks.
Yeah, so you all bring up some very good points as far as like where those communities can come from. I think for me, I'm very fortunate that I found ASM. It's been a platform to help me do things that I wanted to do alone, but wouldn't be as effective alone. And now, I have this squad of over 30,000 people who can, leverage their collective, weight to, to really make some positive changes, And, you brought up the thing about the journals is, the money that goes to those journals actually helps pay for a lot of the ASM endeavors. Things like, was asked, like, well, how do we help graduate students? Well, when I was on the Minority Education Committee, we started a program called the Future Leaders Mentoring Program. So we brought in, graduate students. We gave them year-long mentoring, and we created opportunities not only for them to get leadership training, but that manifested itself into giving them opportunities to then lead, to be run some of the scientific sessions at Microbe, and so these are the things that the entry port to get into the door, and those opportunities allow you to meet other people in the scientific community, to get other experiences, to get other workforce development things that are helpful to you, and all just because I have my squad, right? And you know, and you know, we can leverage this community. We got another question. Asking Terrell and Erica, can you share more about the overlap between the grassroots connection and the policy level decision making? So, kind of like, where are you in there, and essentially, uh, how do you navigate those? Because on a personal level, it's like I can shout at the cloud as much as I want to, and I can try and mobilize those communities. And then you have this really top down level as far as policy decision making. Like so help us fill in some of those gaps if you would, as far as like whoever wants to take that question first.
I can start or you can start,
I was like, it's
however.
a Spider-Man meme and we're both pointing at each other.
Yeah, exactly. Do you wanna take the lead?
I think I will say this. Policy, depending on organizational structure, ASM, institution, your professional organization that you work for, you want to know who are the power players in sort of writing policy. Is it an elected person, or is it an appointed person, or is it a hired person? In all three of those scenarios, from my perspective, the people, through a collective voice, have power to influence how the policy is drafted and even more specifically implemented. The key thing is the collective voice. So I individually can shout, I individually can protest, I can individually, do all of the things. But in order for it to truly drive that structural change, there has to be collective efforts and energy. There has to be collective memos. There have to be collective statements. And then there have to be people willing to step up to help lead whatever reversions, rewritings are running for elected officials, right, that have that collective consciousness in mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I was gonna say is exactly that it's not like there's science and there's policy. There's a continuum of people who are scientists but who want to shout and want their voices to be heard. And then there are people who are policymakers but are maybe, just like as individuals interested in science. And then there's like everything in between. There are PhD level scientists who work as staffers for elected officials. There are PhD level scientists who are elected officials. Um, and what I really encourage people to think about is like where on that continuum you want to be. Do you want to be a scientist whose work is used to inform the policy, or do you want to be a policymaker who's ensuring that science is informing policy? And anywhere and everywhere in between. And so I think I would think about it in that way of like what's important to me, where do I want to be, and sort of like what do you feel called to do, and then to absolutely be responsive to acknowledging that this isn't something that happens in a vacuum, and so be responsive to what is the voice of the collective and like what are the interests of society. So knowing that like just because you're super excited about something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the foremost issue of the day. But like, wait, see if you can gain some momentum around it, see how you can work with it, see how you can incorporate the things that people are excited or angry or whatever about, and use that as a guide to you know, help you advance. So think about it as a continuum and think about where in that you want to be.
Thank you. And you know, I really appreciate, all of the commentary that you all are giving, especially all the resources that you provided. We want to make sure that we get some of those resources to you. I know we have the link. There were a lot of QR codes, so we'll make sure that we get those to you so that you can, we I don't think it's just the stories of people here that we want to hear. We want to hear everybody's stories. And that's what allows us to kind of use our collective strengths to have that voice at those different levels of those communities. Dr. Segar, we have a question for you. How can faculty support students who are experiencing some of the current potential pushing them out of STEM workforce. So like, what are the strategies of, trying to bring them back from the brink, if we'll say that?
I think one of the things that has worked for me is be present for my students through listening, listening to their stories and concerns. That allows me to connect students to resources that I know about, whether it be inside Goucher, like our institution, or external that I not know about through belonging to other communities or societies. And so these resources might help alleviate some of the challenges students are experiencing. But mainly listening, I'm not, as educator, I'm not in a position to assure that everything's going to be okay, right? But I can offer my support and my network in service for my students. I can affirm what they're feeling, that it's okay, that to recognize that we don't do science in a vacuum, but that it's normal for the social pressures and winds to affect the way that we learn and the way that we learn and work. I can sometimes affirm them by sharing examples of ways in which the current climate has been affecting me. And so sharing with them strategies of mindfulness and reflection that I use to make myself feel a little better and some relief. And I think one concrete thing that we can do as community members, and I think this transcends the role of instructor or educator, is provide spaces for one another, for safe storytelling and resource sharing. I feel like that can be really powerful and in and of itself affirming. Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from those individuals that find their calling in other spaces. So, I started off as a musician, and I came into science. So, I do think that there is value in understanding what your options are and choosing one option over the other. But, I think to the point of how you were addressing it, no one should be meant to feel like they can't be a part of a certain community. They should feel welcome, and then they can make the choice after that. But I think affirming them and telling those stories of how you're effective, I think that is absolutely, critical to helping not just people in the STEM communities, but all communities for what they want to be when they want to grow up. And I still say, trying to figure out that for myself. So there's another question we have here. What are you hearing from your students, colleagues, members, and the community about how they're being affected during these uncertain times? And maybe even a follow-up, what are some of the things that you tell them in those particular situations? And we will, let's see, any, mini, miny, mo, we'll start with Dr. Hartman. How about that?
Right. I have heard so many stories, and I think everyone I talk to is affected in a different way. And I think that's one of the things that can be so challenging right now is that we're all dealing with uncertainty, we're all dealing with challenges, but many of us are dealing with different challenges. So for some of us, it's funding, for some of us, it's immigration status, for some of us, it's, am I going to be able to find a job after this? It's different for everyone. And so I say sort of two things. One, is to speak up and share that story because even if, your particular challenge might be different than the person next to you, we are all struggling. And it is by, affirming our experiences and sharing them that we can collectively act to make everyone sort of more certain and more stable. And then the other thing I say is, just try to keep an open mind and look for opportunities, even as, the thing that you thought you were going to do, the thing that looked like the sure path might not be that anymore, is to just, think creatively. We're all trained to think creatively and objectively. And so, apply that to career development in the same way that you might apply it to an experiment.
Yeah, I would just echo that people are experiencing different things. Though we can locate all of the experiences to how systems of oppression, power are attempting to regulate and control people. And what I would argue in terms of a pretty fascist type approach. That's what I would argue. ASM does not have to have that stance. That is a Terrell Morton stance for clarification purposes. Um, and I think as a result of it, right, how are we having, I love Veronica's analogy, the braided river metaphor. How are we having sort of this ecosystem-based lens to seeing the entry points, the exit points, the needs, the opportunities, the possible boulders? Is it even a waterfall? Like, what are these different things that different people are experiencing? And then how, by virtue of having that ecosystems-based approach, can we think intentionally about what it means to show up and how we're able to show up? I may not have the individual power to wave a magic wand or snap my fingers Thanos style and fix it all, but I might be able to show up in somebody's immediate circumstance and be able to provide some brief respite in a situation or circumstance. Or, I mean, one of the things that I've been doing more recently is scrolling LinkedIn at night. And as I just see new job opportunities pop up, I'm sending them to people in my community that I know that are actually searching for new opportunities. So it could be something as quote unquote simple as that, that actually has a very meaningful, powerful impact.
A lot of what I'm hearing from my students is the sense of being afraid to speak up, fearing retribution given the current climate. And I think that everyone is at a different point in terms of what they feel comfortable sharing and exteriorizing. And that's where we can organize as communities so that we can give a space to everyone to speak their truth to the extent that they feel comfortable and safe doing it. Because we don't want anybody doing anything that they don't feel safe with. Um, but in doing that, some of us in the community who might hold a little bit more power, right? We might be able to share the lessons, not the specific stories, but the lessons, what we're hearing in our ecosystem. So it's really important, this idea of creating safe spaces for people to share their mind and their stories. Thanks.
So I know we're getting a flood of additional questions in, and we're running out of time. So I will ask this one quick question to you all, as far as, what are your opinions of, given what's going on, making STEM at a secondary institution more compulsory instead of, I guess, not, something that you wouldn't have to take. Any thoughts there?
I think my thoughts are is that the way of scientific thinking is beneficial, not just to scientists, right, but the common citizen. So I would hope that we can reimagine STEM in ways that the lay people would see its value, especially given the current pressures and landscapes. Can we reimagine STEM in ways that its value, it's more evident to the masses so that it's retained throughout our education system? Thanks.
Dr. Morton?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about the power of literacy. And what does it mean to have a science literacy? But what does it mean to have a community literacy as we are teaching science or engineering or mathematics? So I don't necessarily know if it's so much making it more compulsory or making it required or making it whatever. I think is more so along the lines of how are we really thinking about, as Veronica said, the value of the information? How do we diversify the information that we are perceiving as valuable, knowing that there are indigenous, feminist, African indigenous practices of knowing, doing, and being in the world that are equally valuable as our Western Eurocentric perspectives? And how do we help people see the STEM of everyday life, both in classroom spaces and out of classroom spaces?
Thank you for that. It just I guess it really seems like there's more to just less about the topic itself, but more about the way of thinking, not just in STEM, but how we think through a lot of other social sciences issues as well, and even art and how we, in education. So thank you for those particular comments. So we're right up at the half an hour, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Most of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists, Doctors Sagata, Morton, and Hartman. We really appreciated you sharing your stories, your resources, your time, and your wisdom with us. Also, thank you for all the attendees. We really appreciate your questions and comments. We really hope that you take this opportunity to encourage. We take this opportunity to encourage you to really, engage with our community and hopefully engage with advancing ASM's values through STEM in your respective organizations and your particular community. So, again, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you being here with us, and have a wonderful rest of your day and week.